Hey everyone, and welcome to RUBIN'S Mind Lab, where we break down the latest research into what it really means. Ever wonder if your parents' struggles could somehow echo down to you, even if you didn't experience the same trauma? It is a big question, and today we're diving into a fascinating study that explores just that. This paper is actually a comment on another study by Geng and their colleagues. So, what is the big deal? Well, Geng's original study looked at parents who had experienced trauma and their children. They found that negative parenting styles, like being too rejecting or overprotective, might harm a child's ability to manage their emotions. This, in turn, could be a way that post-traumatic stress disorder or PTSD symptoms get passed down from parents to children. It is like a domino effect. Trauma in parents leads to certain parenting behaviors, which then affects the child's emotional regulation. And then boom, the child might develop PTSD symptoms too. So Geng's study involved nearly 2,500 parent-child pairs. The parents were around 39 years old on average, and crucially, the children were young adolescents, about 11 or 12 years old. They collected information on the parents' PTSD symptoms and how the children felt their parents acted things, like whether they felt rejected or overly protected. They tracked the children's PTSD symptoms over 2 years and also asked the children about their own struggles with managing emotions. Based on all this data, Geng and their team concluded that these negative parenting styles, combined with emotion regulation problems in kids, could be the bridge that transmits PTSD symptoms across generations. It sounds like a pretty strong explanation, right? But here is where our commenters Kimmo, Sorjonen, Melin, and Marika Melin come in with a really important point. They remind us of a fundamental rule in science. Just because two things happen together doesn't mean one caused the other. Think about it. You might see ice cream sales go up at the same time as crime rates. Does eating ice cream make people commit crimes? Of course not. It is usually a third factor, like hot weather, that leads to both. Sorjonen and their colleagues suggest some alternative explanations. One big one is genetics. It is possible that both parents and children might share genes that make them more vulnerable to developing PTSD symptoms, independent of parenting styles or trauma exposure itself. This genetically influenced vulnerability could explain why parents and kids both end up with similar issues. Another idea they float is that maybe kids who are generally more negative, perhaps, they tend to see things in a gloomy light, or are more easily overwhelmed, might also rate their parents more negatively, struggle more with their emotions, and show more PTSD symptoms. In this view, instead of a chain reaction, all these things are just different sides of the same coin, a sort of general negativity that the child possesses. So, to test these alternative ideas, Sorjonen and their team did their own analysis. They took the data that Geng et al. Used and ran it through a different kind of statistical model. Their model, shown in Figure 1, tried to account for this idea of general negativity and also a baseline negativity that affects things at the start of the study. They used sophisticated statistical software to do this. And guess what? Their model did a really good job of explaining how all the different pieces of data fit together. The numbers show that it was a great fit for the data. This means that these alternative explanations, like genetic vulnerability or a child's general negativity, can also explain the connections Geng et al. Observed between parental PTSD parenting styles and children's emotional well-being. It is even possible that the child's own negativity could, in a way, make things worse for the parent's PTSD symptoms. It is not just a one-way street from parent to child. This highlights the complexity of these relationships. Now, Sorjonen and their colleagues are very clear. They aren't saying they've found the absolute definitive truth. Science rarely works that way, especially with observational studies like this, where you are watching things happen rather than setting up an experiment. There are always multiple ways to look at the same data. But what they are saying, and it is a super important takeaway, is that we shouldn't just accept the first explanation that comes along, even if it seems plausible. They urge readers and us to be critical and think about other possibilities. It is like being a detective. You don't just go with the first suspect. You look at all the evidence and consider every angle. And this is a fantastic piece of advice, not just for other scientists, but for anyone interested in how knowledge is built. Researchers should actively try to disprove their own ideas, or at least look for alternative explanations. This critical approach helps us get a more complete and balanced picture of what the data can actually tell us. It stops us from getting too attached to one particular narrative and keeps us grounded in the evidence. So, what is the big story here? The original study suggested a clear pathway for PTSD symptoms to pass from parents to children through parenting and emotional skills. But this follow-up commentary reminds us that the picture is far more complex: genetics. A child's own disposition and the intricate dance between parents and children all play a role. It is not a simple cause and effect. This study's strength lies in its critical examination of findings and its plea for more rigorous testing of alternative hypotheses. It shows that even well-intentioned research needs to be scrutinized, and that science is an ongoing conversation, not a set of final pronouncements. The limitation, of course, is that with observational data, we can't definitively prove causation. We can only infer probabilities and identify strong associations, always keeping in mind that other factors might be at play. What does this mean for us? It suggests that when we think about intergenerational trauma, we need to consider a whole ecosystem of influences. It's not just about what parents do, but also about genetic predispositions, a child's unique way of experiencing the world, and the bidirectional nature of parent-child relationships. Future research could build on this by using more advanced genetic studies or longitudinal designs that can better disentangle these different influences. What do you think about this? Do you see potential for genetic factors to explain these kinds of intergenerational patterns? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this deep dive into psychology, give this video a like. And don't forget to subscribe to RUBIN'S Mind Lab for more mind-bending research breakdowns. We'll see you next time.